You are listening to the So Now What podcast with Lana Manikowski, episode number 160.
So now what? These three words raced through my mind time and time again during my journey through fertility treatments. I tried desperately to have a child, but never was able. I yearned for a community to join that could understand my struggles. I couldn't find one, so I created one with the So Now What podcast. I love that you found us.
Hello, gorgeous. So good to have you back for another episode of the So Now What podcast. I am so stoked about my book coming out. There has been so much going on with the book. If you haven't seen it yet on social media and you're watching me on YouTube, this is my book cover. This is what the cover looks like. I have the hugest crush on my book. I know that sounds really weird and you're probably like, huh, but it's what I think about 24/7. I even told Jack the other night, I was like, babe, I got a crush. Don't worry, it's not another human. It is my book. But I lay in bed thinking about this book. I've been sharing about this book on the podcast. If you haven't heard, the book is going to go on sale April 2nd. You'll likely be able to pre-order it any day now because it is loaded into Amazon where you can place a pre-order, which I highly advise you to do. I've been sharing about this book on social media and sharing excerpts from the book, and the response people have given about the things that I wrote in the book and how it resonates with them validates that the things that I'm sharing in this book are things that people don't talk about a lot. And when they hear someone share that they've been through this journey and the ways that they've experienced their journey, and you might not have ever heard someone say the way that you've been feeling so vividly and so clearly, it tells me there's so much about our journeys that people don't address. And So Now What is doing that. But this book is more than words on a page. So this is a guide. I really see it as a companion and an invitation for you to start creating a life you love, even though you did not have the children that you dreamed of, even though life turned out so differently than you imagined. So this week, episode 160, I am going to talk to you based on a chapter from So Now What? Because I did that last week. I thought it was really fun. You guys seem to like that. For the next couple of weeks, I'm going to highlight different chapters from the book and give you an intro into some of the things that I'm talking about so that you can see how this book is going to help you. So if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that I don't sugarcoat much, especially about this journey of being childless after infertility. And I know how heavy it can feel to wake up every day and wonder if life is ever going to feel easier or feel lighter or feel purposeful and magical again. And most importantly, are you ever going to feel like you again? Because most women I know who have gone through the journeys that we have get to the end of fertility treatments and they feel like they just don't recognize themselves anymore. For so many of us, that heaviness isn't just about the grief of not becoming moms. It's about what we believe that not becoming a mom means about us. So in today's episode, I'm going to share a sneak peek from So Now What? My crush. And one of the most powerful things that I talk about in this early part of the book. So the book's broken down into 3 sections. So this is in section 1. This is chapter 2 in section 1, and it's called What Do You Believe? Because whether you've recognized it or not, the way that you feel about your life and the way that you see yourself, your future, your value, it's all shaped by the beliefs that you have been carrying, oftentimes without realizing it. And I want to talk this week about what you've been believing about yourself. And I want to start by reading a passage from So Now What? And one that I know will feel really familiar to so many of you. So here it goes. The feeling of failure clouded my perception of what I was capable of, and I hit an all-time low when I was told that my only frozen embryo wasn't viable for implantation. In that instant, it was clear. I had done everything wrong. My time, energy, and money had been for nothing. I cheated my husband out of fatherhood. My in-laws wouldn't be grandparents. I believed I'd die alone in a nursing home and that everyone pitied me. And I was the worst case scenario. Most crushingly, I believe that I had lost the chance to lead a fulfilling life of meaning and purpose because my dream of being a mother had been taken from me. I remember how real those beliefs felt at the time. And if you've ever had this moment where you thought, I am a failure, I let everyone down, my life will never feel full again, I want to acknowledge that you are not alone. I've sat with those thoughts. I've coached hundreds of women with those thoughts. And I let those thoughts and those beliefs become my truth for a long time until I started to realize that just because I thought something, it didn't mean it was true. So let's talk about what I was believing and why. So, one of the most powerful things I learned during my journey into life coaching and working with a coach and understanding principles that lay behind life coaching is something that I heard from Abraham Hicks, who is one of my mentors in this coaching space. And she was the first person who made me aware that a belief is just a thought that you keep thinking. And that's it. A belief is not a fact, not set in stone. It's a thought that over time becomes so familiar that it feels like a truth. So when you've spent many years thinking, I'm a failure because I never became a mom, or my marriage will never feel whole without kids, or I'll never know love because I didn't have a child, those thoughts become beliefs. And once something becomes a belief, it shapes the way that you see the world. So we start looking for evidence for it everywhere. But how did that become our beliefs? That's kind of like, where does your belief system come from? How do you accept these things as truth? Where do you hear these concepts and allow them to penetrate into your ears and become part of your thought process? Well, oftentimes it's what we see around us. It's maybe how we were raised. It may be ways that we learn to believe about something in school. Maybe it's through religion. Maybe it's through life experiences or the people that you've seen around you or the way that society portrays certain things or certain people. So when we see things happen and the people around you are buying into that thing or that belief, then we just start to think like, okay, that's just how things are done. People who are females that have reproductive organs are supposed to have kids. You go through fertility treatments, you're supposed to have your rainbow baby. There's all these things that we just believe are true that aren't necessarily always true. So when we see our friends laughing with their kids and we believe that we're missing out on the only thing that brings joy, that's a belief that doesn't help us. We hear someone call motherhood the most important job in the world, and we believe that we'll never have purpose, that we'll never have that most important job in the world. We see families celebrating milestones together, things that they relate to, and we believe we're always going to be on the outside looking in. But I want to ask you, what if those beliefs actually are not true? I never knew that I can question my beliefs and that I could see something that seemed so real and so accurate to me for so long and question, is that really something that I want to continue believing about somebody who's childless after infertility? And I thought because I had been labeled as a failed IVF patient, that meant that I was a failure because anytime I was in a clinical setting and I was reading the results of a pregnancy test, I failed. Cycle, I failed. Result of a transfer, failed. Whatever the case is, I thought that I was then a failure. I believed that that's what I should think of myself when my results were always labeled with failure. I thought that because I couldn't give my husband a child, it meant that I had let him down. I thought that because my dream of motherhood was taken from me, I would never feel fulfilled. But where did those beliefs come from? And who decided that they have to be true? And I just want to ask you that same thing right now. What are the beliefs that you have been holding about yourself? Where did they come from? Who did you hear reciting them? Who told you that you had to believe them? And most importantly, what if they are no longer true? And I just want to be honest with you. This is challenging work. We thought that there's a guidebook and in manual for how we believe about things or how people function in certain areas of their life. And when those things don't happen to be your truth, it's hard to start to think something might be different for you, that you can believe differently about yourself. But when you've spent years believing something about yourself, even if it's painful, it oftentimes feels safer to keep believing that than to consider a different possibility. But here's the thing, girl, you are not stuck. You are not broken. And you do not have to keep believing that your life is over just because you did not become a mom. So that's the question I kept asking myself. If I wasn't a failure, if my life actually was not over, then so now what? How do I start seeing myself differently? How do you let go of beliefs that are keeping you captive? How do you create a future that feels just as meaningful and joyful as the one that you thought you lost? And those are the questions that you need to answer for yourself. And in So Now What, I share exactly that. I share exactly how I did it, how I untangled myself from these stories that were keeping me small and keeping me feeling like a failure, and how I evolved those stories to create a life that feels full. Even though it turned out differently than I thought, even though I never had those children that I just assumed were going to be mine. So, if this conversation today has you realizing that you are carrying around beliefs that aren't allowing you to see yourself in a light that makes you feel proud, or in a light that makes you feel as though you have the ability to be happy with who you are and what's to happen for you in your future, let's talk. I'd love for you to schedule a free Thrive call. Maybe no one has offered you 45 minutes for free to work with somebody who is trained to do this work, but I do. And in this 45 minutes together, everything that we talked about today, we can start applying to your life. We can look at the beliefs that have been keeping you stuck. We can start creating a plan for what comes next. And we can figure out how to start moving forward in a way that feels real and authentic to you and aligned with the life that you want and the life that is available to you where you are actually thriving. So if you want to book a Thrive call, I'll put it in the show notes here. But I just want you to know that you do not have to spend the rest of your life feeling like you are missing out. You get to create something beautiful for yourself. And I'd love to help you take that first step. So I hope you have a beautiful week. I love you. And remember that it's never too late to discover your meaning. I'll talk to you next week. Hey, real quick, I just wanted to tell you about an awesome resource I created. If you have ever found yourself in conversations with people, or maybe people offering you suggestions about what you should do to become a mom, it's called The Top 27 Things People Say When You're Childless and How to Respond. You can get your copy free at lanamanikowski.com/things people say.